This story I'm going to tell you now is not about the past, it's about now. It's about something that's happening right now and that a lot of people haven't noticed yet. It's about an awakening that was prophesied, written, announced centuries ago, and that is finally manifesting. And look, I know this may sound heavy, it may sound intense, but you need to listen to the end, because what's happening in 2025 and 2026 is no coincidence. It is the result of cycles, of untold stories, of buried truths that are finally coming to light. If you are one of those who like to understand the deep movements of the story, the connections that no one talks about, stay with me until the end, because this narrative will open your mind in ways you never imagined. And enjoy. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, because I bring content that makes us think beyond the obvious. Beauty? So come with me on this journey. This story that they are going to tell now is not about the past. It's about now. This is something that is happening right now and that many people have not yet been aware of. It is about an awakening that was prophesied, written, announced several times ago, and that is finally manifesting itself. And look, although they can sound heavy, they can sound intense, but they have to listen until the end, because what is happening in 2025 and 2026 is not a coincidence. It is the result of cycles of untold stories, of buried truths that finally come to light. If you are one of those who like to understand the deep movements of the story, the connections of those who never speak, stay with me until the end, because this narrative will open your mind in ways you never imagined. And enjoy. Let me like it, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, because I bring content that makes us think more than the obvious. Beauty? So come with me on this trip. In the immensity of the Sabbaths and under the eternal vigilance of the ancestors, the drum of destiny resounded with greater force, announcing an era once new and ancient. Just like the constant flow of the great Nile, the change approaches, meandering through the collective consciousness of humanity, carrying with it truths buried for a long time beneath the arenas of time. The world woke up from a deep slumber, a slumber that slept for generations in stories of unilateral glories, forgetting the voices that for so long remained erased. The narratives that unfolded like thin kente canvases, each line a story, each color an emotion, began to come to life. It sprouted from the silence like a baobab that sprouts from a fertile soil, with its roots reaching deep into the earth, seeking to be nourished by the stories of its ancestors. In all the corners of the world, like the echo of a true noon, you who once made whispers became powerful songs. In the theater of the life of masks, the curtains opened, revealing the great tapestry of black culture. I was rewriting the scene of history and modern griots, guardians of collective memory, telling the legends of those who had been forgotten but never lost altogether. The streets are Latin with ancient rhythms. Each drum reverberates like a heart that awakens to the truth. In music, the chords of jazz, blues, reggae, and hip-hop narrated sagas of resistance and resilience. On the screen, the films captured the essence of multifaceted stories, like a mirror that reflects the diversity that always existed but now demands to be seen. And in the political arena, like warriors with spear and shield, black leaders rose up demanding the space they had been denied. Carrying with you the weight and wisdom of previous generations, echoing the words of kings and reigns that ruled in antiquity, when the gold flowed like rivers and the hierarchy forged destinies. But this revival is not produced without resistance. As the wind crashes against the mountain, ancient forces will rise, fearful of losing their dominion. However, the mayor's prophecies were clear. There would come a moment when the truth would emerge, like the rising sun after the darkest night. The oracles spoke of a cycle, of a cosmic dance that revealed the light and the hidden. Thus, the years 2025 and 2026 were marked by the wise as years of revelation, years in which the veil between the past and the present would be torn apart and the stories hidden in the shadows would finally be illuminated. Signs were everywhere for those who had eyes to see. And just as the phoenix resurfaced from the cenizas, black culture was destined to resurface, brilliant and invincible, bringing with it a dawn of wisdom that would illuminate the world. The winds of change exploded with a force that only time could accumulate, carrying with them the first extraneous signs, like messengers of a long-awaited destiny. Stories, previously silenced, began to unfold like the scroll of ancient prophecies, revealing truths that throbbed with the wisdom of ancestors. Pop culture, this vast ocean of voices and images, became the first stage where revelation began to dance. Films like Black Panther were not just works of art, they were high tributes to the spirits of kings and queens who once ruled over loads of gold and sueños. They were like stars shining in the cinematographic firmament, defying the firmament that for so long had denied them their brilliance. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a cry of affirmation, a celebration of ancestry that resonated in all corners of the world. Like a great baobab that extends its branches to the sky, these stories touch hearts and minds, awakening the pride and identity that had been dormant. On social networks, the rhythm of the ancestral drum resonated in hashtags and publications, breaking the barriers that separated the lived stories from the told ones. Movements like Black Lives. The material was not mere sparks. It was the burning call of signs of resistance, burning with an intensity that illuminated the darkness of ignorance and oppression. The digital platforms became spaces of struggle and love, where the narrative was shaped by those who brought scars and the hope of generations into their hearts. Within the scope of knowledge, scientific discoveries were like bold stones thrown into a calm lake, creating waves that reverberated across time and space. The studies on the origin of humanity revealed a truth that the wise people around the Fogatas sang: "We are all African Americans, born from the depths of a continent that has always been the cornerstone of civilization." The colonial narratives, fragile as the paja in the wind, were dismantled by evidence that showed the splendor and sophistication of ancient African civilizations, where knowledge and innovation flourished like fields of wild flowers under the benevolent sun. Books were reissued, silent guardians of secret ancients whose pages whispered largely forgotten stories. Documents previously buried beneath the weight of oblivion emerged as rediscovered treasures, restoring truths that should never have been erased. Therefore, each of these manifestations, seen in isolation, could seem like a simple advance, a step towards the future. But when the boss revealed himself, when the edges of the tape intertwined, it was clear that it wasn't just about progress. It was an awakening. It was a reconnection with the ancestral essence. It was as if a sleeping spirit, which had waited for a long time at the right moment, had finally risen. The world was witnessing the revival of a consciousness, a return to what it always was, but now emerging with a strength that nothing could stop. And so the cosmic dance of revelation continues, promising a morning where truth and justice intertwine in an eternal dance of lights and shadows, of past and future, illuminating the path for all the Haijos and Hijas of the earth. When the great drum of destiny resounded throughout the land, the echo of its rhythm reached the souls who were willing to listen. In the years 2024 to 2026, the world was a witness to a cosmic dance of events that, like the turbulent waters of the Nile in times of flood, could not be contained. Under the attentive gaze of their ancestors, who whispered secrets through the wind and the fire, the children and hijas of the diaspora began to listen to the call of their homeland, a call that resounded like the song of birds at dawn. It was a time when young people stood up like young trees in search of sunlight, longing to root themselves in a soil that offered them the true essence of their identity. They sought more than simple answers. They sought a spiritual connection, a reconciliation with the past that shaped them. In the four corners of the world, young black people looked to the starry sky, seeking the guide of the ancient stars, and turned their hearts to Africa. The mother had always waited for them with open arms. Sometime they inhabited remote lands under extraneous sky. They began to follow the path of return to the sacred continent. Like rivers that come together in the ocean, they flow to Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, and there they will find a home in the soil of flesh and spirit. It was a true pilgrimage, a journey full of hope and promises, of reunion and rebirth. And it didn't last a few miles, just a few miles. Each one of them took with them their dreams and memories that resonated through the siglos. Meanwhile, in the ivory towers of knowledge, imprisoned for a long time by invisible chains, began to free itself. Black teachers, like modern griots, challenged the canon impuesto, and demanded that the story be told on the lips of their true dueños. The universities became fields of battle of ideas, where the truth, like a sharpened spear, crossed fragile narratives that were built on lies and omissions. In the political arena, the descendants of ancient kings and queens, those who carried the blood of the ancient rulers of Mali, Benin, and Zimbabwe, began to occupy the place that belonged to them. They only held positions which transformed nations, bringing with them visions of reparation and justice that resonate with you, that were ancestrally silenced, and in the unit you will find strength. The leaders of the African continent, the Caribbean islands, and the Americas came together, creating a pattern of solidarity that extended throughout the world. In the words of the mayors, in the corners of the birds, in the deaths of the young, it was clear that this was not the work of bad luck, but a movement orchestrated by the very fabric of history, a cycle that had reached its climax. It was as if the stars danced in the sky, lining up to illuminate the path of a new dawn. The revelation was underway, and the world, like a vast and ancient baobab, began to blossom with the promise of a future where truth and justice reigned supreme, where ancestral wisdom would guide each step to fullness. And then, the destiny, in its infinite wisdom, continued to weave its plot, uniting past, present, and future times in an eternal dance where each step was an echo of the initial movement and each action a promise of transformation. Under the attentive gaze of my ancestors, the awakening began, and I couldn't stop. In the immensity of the human spirit, something unprecedented was happening, a transformation that was both silent and powerful, like the wind that whispers secrets between the hundreds of baobabs. This was a turning point that did not manifest itself on streets or plazas, a bell in the center of every being, an awakening that resonated in the hearts of all those who were willing to listen. Like an underground river that finally finds its outlet, collective consciousness began to expand, involving those who had never before contemplated questions of race, colonialism, and power. It was a change that could not be attributed to anyone as the leader. It was as if their own stars were whispered in the ears of men and women, awakening in them a timbre of truth and authenticity. The young black men, who for generations have struggled to adjust to the standards of a world that does not recognize their beauty or their value, now rise up with pride, rejecting the invisible chains that kept them captive. Accepting your own features, celebrating the color of your skin like the gold that shines under the sun, was an act of resistance and self-love, a revolution that was silent but powerful in its impact. Like the flow of a large river that cannot be contained, this transformation extended to oil fields and affected individuals and entire communities on the ground. It was not just an aesthetic or cultural change, but a spiritual reconnection, a return to ancestral roots that had been severed but never truly destroyed. In that air there was something ancient and sacred, an energy that could not be measured with scientific methods, but that was felt deeply by those who were open to receiving it. Within this spiritual revolution, traditions began to emerge, radiant and full of life, that had been relegated to the margins due to ignorance and harm. African spiritual practices, sometimes demonized and persecuted, are now flourishing like fields of sunflowers beneath a dumped sky. Candomblé, Umbanda, Ifa, Voodoo, and many others were not seen as superstitions or folklore, but as systems of deep knowledge, bearers of ancestral wisdom that illuminated the path to a future of self-acceptance and power. And with the revival of these traditions, it brought a renewed power, a power that emanated from a deep place within the human spirit, a power of self-definition that challenged imposed narratives, rewriting stories with the ink of truth and resistance. This new power was not just a question of identity, of self-determination, of looking at history and claiming each line, each verse, each corner as its own. The world was witnessing something that many could not understand, but it was undeniably real for those who lived it. It was like the spirits of ancestors, kings and queens, warriors and wise men. They are woven into the fabric of the present, guiding each step towards a morning of justice and reconnaissance. This spiritual awakening, this silent turning point, was the essence of what it meant to be truly awake, a reminder that even though the path was wide, destiny was within reach, shining brightly like the sun at dawn. Under the attentive gaze of the ancestors, the cosmic dance of revelation continued, promising a future where the truth alone would be heard, but lived to its fullest. And then, while the great drum of destiny continued sounding, announcing the dawn of a new era, the forces of resistance emerged from the shadows, like ancient snakes awakened from their lethargy. The power, in its insatiable thirst, never gave ground without fighting fierce battles. In this new cosmic dance, the fight was inevitable. The systems that were rooted in a single narrative that dictated the rules of the game for so long felt that the ground was lower than their feet. The change was in motion, and they knew that if nothing happened, they would lose the control that for eons they believed was eternal. Campaigns were launched to discredit the Black Revival like poisoned arrows, trying to damage the essence of the movement. The voices of you resounded in the Pasilos of power, whispering conspiracies and expressing doubts, while invisible brothers tried to create disagreement between those fighting for justice. But the ground was not fertile for lies. The seeds that they tried to plant would not find soil from which to grow, because the truth, like an ancient tree, was deeply rooted. The algorithms of social networks, invisible entities that shape and control the flow of information, adjust to suffocate the voices that ask for freedom. But resistance was now like a tide that could not be stopped. For each silenced publication, 1,000 others appeared, each one of which led to the antorch of the truth, illuminating the darkest corners of the digital world. And then, the attempt to silence became a fire that revived even more determination in a village that would not have been defeated. In the political sphere, laws were proposed that attempted to erase the scars of the history of young minds, to hide the shadows of the past that have since dragged themselves into the corners of society. But young people, inheritances of their sueños and the losses of their ancestors, do not hesitate to deceive. We know the stories, not only those that are told in books, but also those that are transmitted as precious treasures in conversations around fire pits, in songs sung under the stars. They knew that the story was not a single narrative, but rather a tapestry of experiences and resistance woven with blood, sweat, and hope. And when the violence increased, like a storm that refuses to dissipate, the hub withdraws. Meanwhile, the diaspora's sons and daughters of all colors and creeds will rise up like a wall of hierarchy, unbreakable and determined. The pain of the past had forged an unbreakable resolution, and each attack was absorbed and transformed into renewed strength. The difference now, in comparison with antiquity, was global unity, a connection that spanned borders and continents, uniting souls in a single song of resistance and hope. The generation that led this new era had tools in its hands that its ancestors never imagined. Technology, a double-purpose weapon, is handled with skill and strategy. They learned from past mistakes, were aware of the challenges their predecessors faced, and built a network of support and knowledge that could not be easily destroyed. With ancient wisdom and modern innovation, they are very relentless in their pursuit of justice. And so, 2025 and 2026 were not just years of conflict, a bell of transformation. The awakening, which began as a whisper, became a deafening roar, a reality impossible to ignore. It was the moment when destiny, with all its complexities and promises, finally reached its climax. The world, like a great baobab, began to flourish with a new truth, from which justice and equality were not just slow dreams, but tangible realities, within the reach of everyone who dared to believe in the power of change. Under the attentive gaze of ancestors, the conflict became an eternal dance of lights and shadows, where each movement was a promise of a better future. In the confines of time, where the present meets the past and the future, we find ourselves on the edge of a transformation that the ancients, in their infinite wisdom, have predicted. This moment, this awakening, is more than a simple movement. It's a cosmic reverberation, an ancient song that resounds once more in everyone's heart, those who seek justice and truth. So the voices that have resonated through time, whispering secrets in the light of the moon, now sing in unison, proclaiming that this is the moment of rebirth, of rewriting history with the colors of reality and hope. What we witnessed is not just an adjustment of accounts, but a great restoration, from which the dignity that had been stripped returns like the sea that bathes the beach, clean and renovating. The pages of our history, which were disfigured and altered by the cold winds of oppression, began to occupy the place that corresponds to them, revealing a rich and complex tapestry woven by brothers who never stopped fighting. This moment, this cycle of revelation, is a powerful reminder that the truth, like an underground river, always finds its way to the surface. It is not a hechizo launched by an invisible hand, but the culmination of generations of resistance and resilience, of dreams dreamed of by those who walked before us, whose huellas are the base on which we support ourselves. At the heart of this silent revolution, collective consciousness expands, allowing the forgotten to recover and the invisible to be seen. It's a call that goes beyond the physical, touching the spirit and reviving the calls of identity, which could never be completely extinguished. It is a celebration of everything denied, an affirmation that the beauty and strength that emanate from the black roots are of Hicho, the ones that support the trunk of humanity. And so, while the world continues to spin under the attentive gaze of the constellations, the dark revelation is not just an event, but a continuous process. It's the rhythm of an ancient drum that never stops sounding, guiding us through darkness to a future. Illuminated by truth and justice, the black contribution to this change, always central, now stands out in its glory, demanding recognition and respect. Those who have always controlled the narrative, feeling that the ground is moving beneath their feet, can try to resist, but the tide of the story is unstoppable. For those who have been marginalized, this is an era of empowerment, an era in which the silenced of you rise with a strength that cannot be ignored. What will we do with this awakening? This is the question that answers the minds and hearts of everyone who is in tune with the barks of destiny. This is the time to build, to honor the sacrifices made and the paths traveled. This is the moment to start a new morning where justice and equity are not mere ideals, but tangible realities. Then, beneath the vast and eternal sky, the election is ours. The moment is now, and beneath the attentive gaze of our ancestors, the cosmic dance continues, promising a world from which each soul can rise free and true, from which awakening is not just a memory, but the essence of who we are and who we will be. May the light of revelation guide our steps, and may our indomitable spirit always find the path to truth.